Are you really buying a car online on AutoTrader right now?
Really, I can get super specific with dealer listings and see cars based on my budget.
You can really have it delivered.
Or pick it up.
Mommy, look!
I think your kid is walking up the slide.
Really?
AutoTrader. Buy your car online. Really?
Maybe you recognize this voice. Andy Betterman here of the injury law firm Greenberg & Betterman. For over 35 years, we've been helping people in the DMV with auto accidents and medical malpractice. Get a free consultation by visiting gblawyers.com and feel better.
Thanks for checking out another edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle, but you're listening, so you should know that by now. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. You can find this podcast just about anywhere. We're on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, Overcast FM, Google Play, and YouTube. And of course, you can catch me on Instagram at 12 Kyle Podcast. You can follow the Facebook page, facebook.com/spell it out, TWELVEKYLE. And of course, you can catch me on Twitter at 12 Kyle, the number 12 KYLE. And you can follow the podcast at 12 Kyle Podcast. It's pretty simple, so there's no reason not to subscribe. All right, on this particular podcast, we're going to talk about classic hip hop albums. More specifically, what does it take to actually deem an album a classic? So sit back, pass the word, get your popcorn ready. We're going to drop the theme music, and we're going to get this podcast cracking. Let's get it. Welcome back. It's your boy 12 Kyle. As I mentioned in the intro, man, we're talking about what makes a classic hip hop album. I came to this discussion really from just observing a couple of conversations that I saw on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. Somebody's album had come out, and I know, I kind of, take it with a grain of salt, because I understand that on a platform like Twitter, you only have 140 characters, right? So, there's really not a lot of room for debate, but I just happened to see something on my timeline. Two guys were going back and forth about somebody's album, and they deemed it a classic. And I've seen that before, and I, generally speaking, I try to stay away from those conversations, particularly with people who don't know much about hip hop, or maybe sometimes with those who are slightly younger than me. And it's no shade to anybody younger than me. I am tenured in hip hop. But I think the thing is that like their vision and my vision is a little different. And that's not to say that they're right or I'm right or wrong. But if I'm in my 40s and you're you're 21 years old, I think I've probably seen a little bit more than you have. So your view and my view is going to be slightly different. Again, not saying one is right or one is wrong. But the idea or the discussion of, what makes a classic hip hop album, I think first and foremost, you have to understand that when you deem a hip hop album a classic, first and foremost, and I think this is a key rule of thumb, you have to understand that it is all subjective. It is all subjective, meaning that there's no governing board to make sure that your album of choice gets deemed a classic or what have you. So I think if you keep that in mind, I think that makes the conversation a little bit easier to digest, no matter what side of the coin that you're on, because it's all subjective. Hip hop is only been around since the 70s, so it's not like it's a music genre that's been around since the beginning of time. Nonetheless, even those like myself who are tenured in hip hop and have seen a lot come and seen a lot go, I think we also have to be very mindful about what we deem classic and what we deem not classic. But it's a couple of things that I think, first and foremost, that are pretty common with classic albums, and I'll give you a few. Generally speaking, and this is just overall, generally speaking, a classic album is your favorite personal album or one of your favorite personal albums. I think we can all agree on that. I don't think I've ever heard anybody deem something a classic that they didn't like. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's just one commonality between, when you hear someone talk about a classic hip hop album. Obviously, it's an album that, a personal album to them that they personally like. Another common theme in a classic hip hop album is that it's an album that you listen to it weeks, months, even years after its release. And I'll get more into that in just a second. But it spans time. I think that's very, very common when you're talking about classic hip hop albums. The next thing is that it's your go-to music. That's another common theme with the classic album. What I mean by go-to music, it's something that you often listen to, and you don't necessarily have to get in the mood to listen to it. I'm not, and I'll just throw this out there, even though I don't deem it classic. Lil Jon and East Side Boys, right? So if you, and for those of you listening, if you like Lil Jon and East Side Boys, more power to you. But like me, I don't listen to Lil Jon and East Side Boys. But if I did listen to Lil Jon, I think that's something that you have to get in the mood for. I really couldn't see me listening to, to the windows, to the walls, right before I go into my conference at work. We got a 9:00 conference call, and I'm listening, to the windows, to the walls. That's just not gonna happen. But nonetheless, I think music like that, I would deem that you would have to get in the mood to listen to. Maybe you might listen to Lil Jon on your way to the club. I don't know. Maybe you might listen to Lil Jon on your way to church. I don't know. I mean, for those of you listening to Lil Jon, maybe you could tell me, drop it in the comment section when you listen to Lil Jon. Personally, I don't, but it's neither here nor there. Nonetheless, my point is that that's another common theme, is that music like that you have to get in the mood for. Classic albums you generally don't have to get in the mood for, because the albums are just that. They resonate with you, so they're always there for you to listen to, and it's not necessarily something that you have to kind of prep yourself up, if you will, to listen to. And I think one of the other key points about a classic hip hop album is the music never gets old. And I think that's very key, because if we're honest with ourselves, sometimes we listen to music and it's really, really dope the first time we listen to it. And it's really, really dope the third or fourth time we listen to it. Then it's dope the 10th time that we listen to it. But around the 12th or 11th time, maybe you're not listening, or maybe something else comes along and you kind of push that to the side. So I think, music can wear on you, or it can become stale, if you will. And that happens with most music, and that happens with our taste in music. Because if we're honest with ourselves, our music is constantly changing, and therefore we're constantly changing as far as how we feel about the music that's being disseminated to us. But I will say this, if it's a classic hip hop album, then it doesn't necessarily ever get old to you. You don't, and again, it goes back to the point that I just made. You don't have to get in the mood to listen to something. Some music you do, and it's okay, because everything that we listen to isn't classic. And another thing that I think that goes without saying is that it's okay. For some reason, I don't know when things have changed, but it's almost like people are afraid to say, well, this is bad music, or this isn't good. Everything that we listen to from that perspective, is not necessarily the greatest thing that you've ever heard. It's just not, you know what I mean? And it's okay to say that, and it's okay to feel that way. And I was talking the other day to one of my boys, and I was telling him, like, even on the most classic of classic hip hop albums, or albums that you deem classic, there may be a song, maybe two songs that you don't particularly care for, but because the album is a classic, you'll still listen to them, but it may or may not be your favorite song. And case in point, I was talking about, and I did a review on this podcast on Criminal Minded. I love Criminal Minded, love the album. I think it's a classic. There's a song on the album called Dope Beat, and Dope Beat is a cool song. I like Dope Beat. It's probably my least favorite song on the album, but I still like the song. But at the end of the song trails off, and the late great DJ Scott LaRock is rapping at the end. I don't like that part of the song. I don't like that part of the song. And when you hear it, and you can listen to it after you listen to this podcast, I think I'm wondering why they even put it on. It didn't sound bad in 87 or 88. But in 2017, it just doesn't sound that good or appealing to me. So, but nonetheless, that does not take away from it being a classic hip hop album, in my opinion. So I think it's okay, even with classic hip hop albums or albums that you deem classic, to say, okay, well, you know what? I don't think that's a classic, or I don't like this song. It's okay. And it seems like everybody is so quick to be in agreement with, music that may or may not be as good as we think that it is. So it's you have to kind of take it all with a grain of salt, right? So just take it with a grain of salt and just view the music for what it is. And once you do that, I think you'll be okay. All right, I tell you what, let's take a quick commercial, and on the other side, we're gonna break it down. We're gonna break down what is a classic hip hop album. I'm not going to name many albums specifically, but I want to just give you my answers as to what I think makes a classic, and how we deem classic hip hop albums. Like I said, we'll take a quick commercial, and we'll be back on the other side.
Songwriters for Sunny Came
Please calm down. The music and everything. I went and bought me an outfit today that costed a lot of money today. You know what I mean? Because I figured that Wu-Tang was going to win. I don't know how y'all see it, but when it comes to the children, Wu-Tang is for the children. We teach the children. You know what I mean? Puffy is good, but Wu-Tang is the best. Okay? I want y'all to know that this is ODB, and I love you all. Peace.
Is this us? I'm confused now.
And just like that, we are back. Yo, shout out to ODB, man. That hands down, that's my favorite member of the Wu-Tang Clan, man. All right, so in this podcast, as I mentioned at the top, we're talking about what makes a classic hip hop album. Right before the break, I told you that I would be coming back, telling you and just breaking it down. So I think first and foremost, what you have to understand is that there's a difference. When we say classic hip hop album, there's a difference. There's the modern day classic, and then there's the all time classic. What I mean by that is that you can't have you have to separate the two, because I don't think that you can take, let's use an album, for instance, like a lot of people that I know deem Kanye West's My Twisted Dark Fantasy a classic. Personally, I don't. I like it. I don't love the album. Well, I take it back. I love the album. I don't love it as much as I love College Dropout, personally. But I've heard people call that a classic. Now, if you deem that album a classic, My Twisted Dark Fantasy, then I think that would be more of a modern day classic as opposed to a all-time classic. Reason being is that I don't think that you could put what Kanye has up against in that album, which is a great album, up against Eric B. and Rakim's Paid in Full. I mean, like, in many circles, Eric B. and Rakim's Paid in Full is deemed not only, an all-time classic, but it is deemed by many the greatest hip-hop album of all time. It's personally my favorite hip-hop album of all time. So I don't think you could deem, and even if I go with my favorite Kanye West album, which I would deem a modern day classic, that would be Kanye West's first album, College Dropout. Does it compare to Paid in Full? No, it doesn't. And I think first and foremost, you have to understand that it's extremely hard to compare different eras. You look at an album like, College Dropout versus, or let's say My Twisted Dark Fantasy that came out in the 2000s. Then you have an album like Paid in Full that came out in the 80s. And it's hard to compare the two because what's going to happen is the music is going to sound different. The MCs will sound totally different as far as their subject matter and what they're rhyming about. And just everything is just different. So you have to kind of, and again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. It's all subjective, but I don't think that you can necessarily quantify the two because they're on polar opposites. I couldn't compare To Pimp a Butterfly to Raising Hell by Run DMC. To Pimp a Butterfly from Kendrick Lamar to something by Run DMC, Raising Hell. So yeah, it's. I think you have to keep that in mind. And I think a lot of times when I hear people talk about, oh man, such and such album dropped, this album's a classic. Personally, before I even get into the discussion, I automatically in my mind deem it, if they're calling it a classic, then I just deem it a modern day classic. I don't deem it an all-time classic. I just don't. And I think that's fair for me because maybe the person who is saying that doesn't necessarily, maybe they haven't heard, Criminal Minded, or maybe they haven't heard Paid in Full, or maybe they haven't heard The Great Adventures of Slick Rick. I don't know. So, which I think all hip hop fans should have at least heard, but that's neither here nor there. But I understand too that some people, they love their eras, and I get it. But when you're talking about it and speaking about it, and removing your biases as to what you like, I think it's very hard to compare. I mean, it's hard even, and I'll use a sports reference. I'm a sports guy. I like to use sports references. It's hard for me to compare Oscar Robertson to Michael Jordan. I didn't see Oscar Robertson, right? I can't. All I can tell you is what I saw on film. I knew he was a bad man, but I saw Jordan. I saw Jordan in his prime. So I would never make the comparison between Jordan and Oscar Robertson. Maybe I could make the comparison between Jordan and Kobe Bryant because I saw both of them in their prime play. Jordan's better, but that's another story for another day. But nonetheless, I think it's hard to compare eras. It just really is because of your subject matter, because of how MCs evolved and their subject matter and what they talked about and what they did on the mic. And then the world around them was totally different as well. So I think you got to keep all of that in mind, man, as you're trying to, decipher what is a modern day classic as opposed to an all time classic. Like I said, it's hard to compare eras. The subject matter is very important. Nowadays I understand why, rappers or MCs would be rhyming about drugs, girls, crime, and that's not to say that it wasn't rhymed about in the 80s, because it was. In fact, Criminal Minded was one of the first albums where you heard about drugs and violence and prostitution and things like that. NWA came through and blew the doors off, and they were killing people in every song. And I deem, and many have deemed, Straight Outta Compton a hip hop classic. And I think one of the things that you have to understand too is that when you look at the subject matter and what's the difference between a classic and a modern day classic is not only the subject matter, but the world around them, but it's an all-time classic album is a groundbreaking album, meaning that there's no other album like it in the particular genre that it is. So if you deem Paid in Full a all-time classic, you can't point to me and say, okay, well, hey, this album sounds like Paid in Full, because there are no other albums that can compare or sound like it and in that same era of time. Same for Straight Outta Compton, where they, was Dr. Dre and the guys and Ice Cube, and Eazy-E, were they blowing you away with lyrics, and Ren, were they blowing you away with lyrics? Of course not. I mean, like, they had some dope lyrics, for the time that in which the album came out. And that's the thing, you have to kind of put it in perspective. And that's why I say it's very hard to compare eras, because, if Eazy-E was talking about cruising down the street in my 6'4", that may that's not necessarily going to apply to someone listening to hip hop today. Nonetheless, I think it's the classic albums are your albums that are the blueprints, that are the trendsetters for what the next wave of albums or MCs will be. So if you take an album like A College Dropout or My Twisted Dark Fantasy, while it does not stack up, and there's no shame in it not stacking up with Paid in Full or, Criminal Minded, what it does is it set the bar for where MCs, production, the whole nine would be at the time that it came out. So I would deem those modern day classics. And so that's how I think you have to look at it. Like, personally, for me, I think it one of the other biggest things that you have to understand too is that, and I talked about it in the beginning, is that it takes time. I mean, it truly does take time. You can't have a all-time classic or deem an album an all-time classic, or even a modern day classic for that matter, if it's been out for a month. I mean, like, I've seen people review albums and, they say, oh man, this is a classic. Wait a minute, man. Pump your brakes. It doesn't work like that. I mean, like, you have to be able to digest. I mean, like, I think you could make a case that an album probably should be out 5-10 years before you could even consider it a classic. I will go this far as saying that is that, like, the first time that I heard an album, like when I heard Reasonable Doubt in 1996, and I did a podcast on Reasonable Doubt. Reasonable Doubt, nobody listened to Reasonable Doubt the first time and said, yo, this is a classic, son. This is dope. I mean, we knew it was dope. We knew it was a great album. But no, that album became a classic over a period of time. Same with Illmatic. Now, Illmatic was highly, highly anticipated because of Nas's verse on Live at the Barbecue. But no, I mean, you didn't listen to Illmatic the first time and say, yo, it's a classic. I remember hearing Illmatic for the first time, and I remember I kept playing it for my boys. Anybody that got in my car, I would play the album for them. And like we could just be riding to the store and I'd be playing the album. And I remember I had a couple of friends that didn't even like it. And I'm like, how do you not like this? Same for Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers. Enter the 36 Chambers. I had friends and teammates in college who couldn't even understand like they did. It was like, okay, well, who's rhyming now? Okay, who is that? Who is it? It was real funny. But nonetheless, I think it happens over a period of time. You can't deem an album a classic after your first listen. You can't deem an album a classic after your 10th listen. It takes time. It takes years and years and years before an album is deemed a classic. Even as I was preparing to do this podcast, when I sat down, I started thinking about, like, what's the last classic album, or at least modern day classic album that I've heard. I think the last classic modern day album that I've heard is Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp A Butterfly. I can make a case that I think it's going to be a modern day classic. I think it goes without saying. I think that ultimately it will be a modern day classic. I would have liked to have seen if Kendrick Lamar was around in 1988, the greatest year in hip hop. if he had made an album like that where it would have stacked up, I think this album is so incredible that it would have been right there with the rest of the great albums from 1988. So I think in that vein, Kendrick Lamar would have made an album that is a all-time classic. He can't help it when he was born. But I think if somebody said that, in a few more years, we'll go back and revisit it and talk about it, and they may deem To Pimp a Butterfly a modern day classic and try to make a case for it being an all-time classic years from now, I'd be up for that discussion, because I don't know how much pushback you could get for that album making a case for that, because it is a phenomenal album. But that being said, again, going back to my point, you can't, when an album just comes out, you can't deem it. And I understand that there's millennials, if you will, younger folk, younger generation, they deem stuff classics like that. Personally, I understand why they do, but I don't think that that's safe. It's not safe for the culture. It's not safe for hip hop. If you're deeming something a classic and you barely had a chance to digest it. I remember hearing Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life when I was a kid, and I didn't know it was a classic, but I knew it was some dope shit. My parents played it around the house, and then he dropped Hotter Than July, and that was like one of my favorites. Those two albums, my two favorite Stevie Wonder albums, two of my favorite albums of any musical genre of any time period. And I understand it's a little bit different for R&B, but nonetheless, it's in the same vein. I think you got to give it some time, man. I think people are too, and it goes back to the society that we're in. They're too quick to deem stuff the greatest. I mean, like, you can't be, you can't like people were saying, and I'll use another sports reference. People were saying Steph Curry was the greatest basketball shooter of all time. He's not the greatest shooter of all time. He's a great shooter, but you can't be the greatest of all time and your career ain't even halfway over. I mean, he might get on drugs and, fall out of the league. I don't know. I mean, I don't wish anything bad on Steph Curry. It's just, you got to give it time, and even back to a sports reference, people always ask me about, what I think of LeBron. I think LeBron James is a phenomenal player. He is the best of his generation, and where he will go down in the all-time greats remains to be seen. You know why? Because he's not done. Let him finish first, and then we can decide where we may want to place LeBron. I say that the same for some of these albums that are coming out. We've seen some very, very good albums come out. That being said, I think you have to, a lot more of them probably fit in the modern day classic. There's probably more that aren't classic that people deem modern day classic that I won't co-sign with, but if that's their opinion, that's fine. Classic is not either modern day or all-time classic. It's not a word that I throw around a lot, because I understand that, it's very imperative to hip hop that we preserve the best of the best of the best, the dope of the dope of the dope. I mean, like, you can't, every album can't be a classic. Every album can't be a classic, man. It's just, it just can't happen. And last but not least, man, you can't have an all-star roster and you're on your album and it be a classic. I mean, if you look at some of the, all-time classics, if you look at, The Great Adventures of Slick Rick, if you look at It Takes a Nation of Millions by Public Enemy, if you look at Strictly Business by EPMD, just to name a few, there weren't 15 guest features on those albums. There weren't, 22 producers to produce 22 songs. 22. I mean, like, think about it like this. If you're making an album, right, and you go get Kanye, you go get, Pharrell, you go get Timbaland, you go get Primo, you go get Ninth Wonder. Those are 5 of the arguably the best producers in hip hop right now. So you go get all of them and put them on your album. And then you go get Jay-Z for a verse. Then you go get Nas for a verse. Then you go get Kendrick Lamar for a verse. Then you get Kanye on the verse of the album or the song that he produced. Then you get, I don't know, 50. I mean, like, you add all of these people to it. So it's like you got you literally, your album is littered with all-stars. How could you not win? How could you not, go, well, by theory, you probably should go triple platinum, even though record albums don't sell. I wish I had time to talk about why albums don't sell anymore. But nonetheless, I think you're doing yourself. I don't want to say you're doing yourself a disservice, because I understand why artists get with other artists, but you can't necessarily deem an album a classic if they've got, if it's not their album. And what I mean by that is that if you got 10 other artists on your album, then it's not your album. It's more of a compilation. They're just packaging it as your album. So yeah, man, all-star rosters. Now this is just my personal opinion. If you've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 features on your album, I'm not labeling it a modern day classic, because it's just not. I think you kind of stacked the deck. You went Golden State Warriors on them. Another basketball reference. So yeah, man, I think those are some of the things that help make a classic hip hop album. Again, it's all subjective. But I think we as hip hoppers, we as hip hop heads have to be very, very protective of how and where we use those words, classic hip hop album, because, it's about the culture, but more importantly, people are listening. And as long as people are listening, we have a chance to influence them. So we got to make sure we get it right. That's going to do it for me. Thank you for listening to another edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.
Today's tip from the injury law firm Greenberg and Betterman. Too many pedestrians lose themselves in their phones and have accidents when they walk. So don't do it. Greenberg and Betterman is here to help you. Contact gblawyers.com. That's gblawyers.com and feel better.